a lot of people don't know how to see consequences. Now, what I mean by this is, you know how people, there's always been a saying that every action has a consequence, but no one actually uses that to their advantage to learn what has a consequence and how does it affect me. And the first point I want to bring up about this problem is that the school system failed you. The school system was designed to educate you, to bring you into the real world so that you wouldn't need anything else. You wouldn't need external parenting, and you could rely on this centered, governed level of education, which would bring people better ideas and better methods to employ onto not only themselves but to their children, and then the education would also improve in the future generations. Right. That's a good theory, but obviously in practice, since we didn't actually look at the consequences of this, for example, is that you just get a self-governed body of manipulative content distribution to children. That's essentially what school is. Like, no one questions what they teach in, I don't know, like history class. Like, whatever they say is basically true. But obviously, we don't know that. Like, no one checks it because no one sees the consequence of believing that this thing that we're going into is a lie and that it affects us in this drastic, unknown way, where it also creates a problem of what we don't know is actually hurting us, right? So, going back to my point here, the problem with that is that people aren't trained to see the consequences of the future with their present actions, which doesn't allow them to see the major impact that it has on their children. For example, when they're teaching them to share or something, and maybe they do it one way instead of another. And what's happening is that instead of us being capable instead of us being capable from teaching children, or as in teaching children how to share, you have to become this professional psychologist and dig into research to figure out how to raise a child in the supposedly correct manner, right? And it's just, people really don't know how to see like what's bad and what's good, right? It's like no one's ever trained you to do this. It's not your fault, right? That you weren't trained how to see a consequence and be like, or see an action and be like, okay, this is the good, this is the bad, extrapolate that into the long term and figure out, should I make this decision or not? Now, yes, it takes time, but for this example, I think it would be worth it because it's for your own child, right? And another thing I wanted to bring up is that a lot of people have the patience of a rat. Yes, a rat. And the reason why I say that is because of A, your phone, and B, the society that we have been brought up into is almost a negating factor for, it's a major negating factor for being able to develop your patience unless you decide to not participate in these activities, right? We should know what they are by now. It's the thing that you probably have it in the next room over. You probably maybe even have it in your room as you're watching this. So these things do not help you see more consequences because you literally sit there and exactly what I wrote. You have the patience of a rat. And literally, if there's a tiny piece of cheese, or for human reference, like dopamine of some sorts, you're like, boom, go for it, you know? And a big thing that I actually really want to go into here is that nobody thought of technology. Here's what I mean. When Bill Gates invented Microsoft, when Steve Jobs invented Apple, when Zuckerberg and Facebook and the other ones or whatever, right? Nobody thought about the consequences of technology at the time. Now, you could argue, oh, well, how are they supposed to do that? They just came up with it, and all this stuff is just brand new. Well, then how did they come up with it in the first place? It's not like a giraffe told them to go make a phone. It's not like a giraffe told them to go make a software for computers. Like, the things were already existent in people's minds. It's just nobody thought about the negative consequential piece to having this technology and this social connectiveness through a phone, right? And obviously that's a major issue, especially for children, since when you're in your adolescent age and you're developing, you go through the process of figuring out how to connect with people, how to bring your emotion out, how to bring competitiveness out even for men, and how to bring, I guess, love out for women, right? These things that are natural in life are now being emitted through a radio wave emitting phone, which you can't even see another person's face through the thing, unless you use FaceTime, which, okay, whatever. But like, how many people use FaceTime for an actual decent chunk of their day? I mean, minus like the occasional like relationship thing, right? So the problem is that nobody, like, I believe there are people out there that use this purposely as a weapon, this unknowing harm that technology causes. But I also believe that nobody was actually capable of seeing this large picture of here's what's going to happen with technology, because nobody actually took the effort to do it, which in my opinion is pretty stupid, because obviously I can say that in hindsight, but also if I were to go make, like, let's say, I don't know, like a 4D printer, right? Some weird thing. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be like, or better example, right? Making the atomic bomb, when like one of the Russian scientists made the first like atomic bomb, they didn't think of the consequences until after, because afterwards they regretted making the bomb itself. You can go look this up. You'll find a name and the person. I think they were Russian or something, or German. I can't remember which one. But it's the idea of thinking of the consequences in the present, which you aren't taught about in school, which your parents don't teach you, which means that it's something that you have to use your own knowledge to create about yourself, using the what Huberman calls neuroplasticity, which in plain English means the ability for your brain to basically like learn and like adapt to new things. Simple as that. And it's this idea of reframing your mind to observe how far into the future your actions will impact you, and if the consequences are good or bad. So, taking this into consideration, we understand now that consequences are something we have to teach ourselves, which we can do through simple things like, oh, what are the consequences of being on social media? What are the consequences of playing video games? What are the consequences of not going outside? What are the consequences of ice baths? What are the consequences of what are the consequences of sauna? What are consequences of eating good foods? So many things there's so many actionable steps you can take here. Just think about one, and then really extrapolate it into the future. And a good habitual way to do this is through chess, because that's the entire premise of the game, is to extrapolate your current position into the long term and the moves to see if apologies, to see if your plan is accurate to how you're going to win in this reality-based game where you have an opponent who's wanting to win as well. So, to I guess wrap this up a bit, it's that I want you to be able to teach your kid that this is bad, this is good, and it's bad or good in the long term. So maybe there's a bad decision right now, right? Maybe it's a bad decision for you to exercise, which obviously it isn't, but you know that it isn't because of the long-term consequence, which you thought about. But do you think about that when you're sitting at a desk? Not really. You don't really think about how your spinal cord doesn't exactly stand upright or posturally, and because of the muscles or whatever, right? And you don't really think about how these things would change the way your confidence looks, the way your body language looks to people, right? Or maybe the way this communicates a message to other people. You wouldn't think of that at first. But that's what we need to develop as a society, since we're going into a world where the flaws of our existence right now are almost all based on long-term consequences that people just haven't identified, or people that are choosing to be willfully blind to, but the future always comes and the present is always here, right? You can't make time go backwards. It's just not how it works. So, what I want you to do is take this knowledge and please do something with it. Try to learn what are the consequences of reading a book. What are the consequences of running a vacuum, right? I'm saying that because I see a little like an iRobot, if you know what those are, like little vacuum thingies. I see one right now, that's why I said that. And I'll give you one example real quick before I go. It's that, right, for the iRobot vacuum, okay, I start up the vacuum, it vacuums the carpet for me, it's very nice. I get to either go do something else or not do anything at all. Most people being lazy, we'll go down that route for ease, say they're not doing anything at all during the time of the robot vacuuming, right? So, convenience, okay. Long-term convenience, yes, as long as the battery doesn't die, as long as you don't need to repair it for whatever reason, and sometimes you have to empty out the thingy, like the thing that stores all like the garbage or whatever you like pick up at the vacuum, or like the hair, for instance. And then there's the person consequence to that. There's, okay, now this person is becoming lazier. Maybe they're using this opportunity to eat more food. Maybe they're using the opportunity to do something bad or do something good. Like, don't get me wrong, they could be doing something good this time. Like, they could be exercising, they could be meditating, whatever. And that could actually be helping them, right? That's how you use a tool to advantage yourself, is you use the tool to take away the time constraint on you to then use it for something else that you're willing to put your time into, right? That is a simple formula to make your life 40 times happier. Just do that, right? Like, run an iRobot vacuum, and then while it's vacuuming, just meditate. Just literally go for a walk. Just do something that you know as the individual would benefit you, right? Maybe go talk to some friends, if they're good friends, obviously. And go for it. So, like, that's a certain example, right? Now, okay, you could say that it could take a long time to do this all the time, but you have to understand that there's a certain level where you can say, okay, this is something I shouldn't be doing here, this is stupid. And then there's another level where you can say, okay, this is where I have to be accountable, this is where I have to know this, because knowing something for my children is a highly valuable thing that they're going to be the ones representing me after I'm dead. That's how I see children, right? So I want them to be able to represent me, my mother, my father, my grandparents in the best way possible by being the absolute quality version of themselves, that while becoming the thing that they want to become. So I think that sums it up well. And I hope you take this time to teach people and teach yourself to see more consequences. I'm out.